I know, I'm hopping on the bandwagon, okay? If my bed is the bandwagon, I'm hopping right in it. Hi, sorry, if this is your first time here, my name is Kylie. Welcome to the channel. Typically, I only post on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but I missed posting on Wednesday because I was very busy preparing and filming for the Oscars, which just came out on Friday. That was super cool. It took a lot of work. It was a big project, a lot of coordinating and stuff like that. So I skipped my Harry Potter review for that week, but it will be starting up again next week. And today, the day that I'm filming this, is also the day that I filmed for the Oscars, and my makeup it looked so good. Well, I took off my lipstick because that was just getting annoying, but my hair also looks really good. I was like, I need to take advantage of this opportunity. I'm gonna film a couple more videos today, and because I skipped out on the Harry Potter review, I thought it would be nice to give you guys this little extra video today. But because I was spending so much time preparing for the Oscars and everything like that, I just didn't have time to like write a script or anything, but I still wanted to get this extra video in. Also, as you can see, I'm not in my usual location. I'm in bed, and it's just because this is where I wanted to be today. It was really cloudy and it was even raining earlier, but now the skies are like blue and clear. I know it sounds like I'm complaining, but I love cloudy, rainy weather for watching horror movies, and now it's just sunny all of a sudden again. We never get to have good horror movie weather in LA. Look at me just complaining about beautiful weather. So anyways, today's video, yes, I know I'm hopping on a bandwagon. I know that Spooky Astronauts kind of started this, and then Possessed by Horror started doing it. I think my friend Jennifer started doing it as well. But I'm gonna talk about all the movies that I rated on Letterboxd in February, so all the stuff that I watched in February. And I know it's not an original idea, but this way I can tell you guys about literally everything that I'm watching. And it's also a very like laid back, literally a laid back, non-scripted video, and so it's just nice. I just want to feel like I'm just hanging out with you guys sometimes and it's not a scripted video. And if you like this style and you want more of this is more what I do on my vlog channel, by the way. So let's just kick it off, because I watched 15 movies in the month of February. Well, actually, no. I rated 15 movies on Letterboxd, but I also watched 3 of the Final Destination movies. I watched one of the Saw movies. I watched Valentine's Day and Valentine, but most of those movies I cover in very in-depth reviews, just like single reviews on my channel. So I don't rate them on Letterboxd because I kind of want it to be a surprise about how I feel about them. So in reality, I probably watched closer to 30 movies this month, but I just make sure to rate all the ones on Letterboxd that I never really intended on fully talking about on my channel. But here we are talking about them on my channel today, so let's just get started. Okay, so starting with The Last Exorcism. I got it on DVD, and like all over the DVD they have written on it like a bunch of different reviews, and they're like, ew, it was a breath of fresh air, like such a unique exorcism movie. I just didn't really feel that way. I felt like it was a really generic exorcism story. It just was found footage, which was kind of unique. And then there is kind of a big twist at the end, which kind of sets it apart from other exorcism movies, but it is one of the laziest twists that any writer could have ever possibly come up with. It's basically like the main kind of cop-out twist that writers use that are like kind of lazy. At least that's what I've been taught. That's like what I know from my experience in like getting my minor in creative writing and stuff. Just a really lazy twist. The acting is alright. Like, it's a well-made film. It's just, I don't know. It's whatever. So I give it 2.5 stars. So like a 5 out of 10. It's just it's like mediocre. I don't know. It's not bad by any means. Like a pretty well-made film, but I didn't really like it. Up next is As Above, So Below. I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie. On Letterboxd, I said National Treasure meets horror meets found footage is the best way to describe this one. That's very true, and I will say that there was some kind of subpar special effects, some kind of, shall I say, unnecessary character arcs going on, just because they kind of included a lot of backstory into this, and I get what they were going for because of like the ultimate metaphor that they ended up trying to portray with the catacombs, but I didn't love it. I kind of just wish that they had stuck to a more simple story, because as is in the first like half of the movie, I would say you're just with this group of people and they are just trapped in the catacombs under Paris and they're lost. That was enough for me. They added kind of a lot of rather contrived plot lines and kind of a, I don't know, unnecessary twist in my opinion. I thought that the movie was good enough just being this super claustrophobic piece of them just trying to get out of the Paris catacombs, and it was actually filmed in the catacombs, which I think is just the coolest thing. They were the first film crew to be allowed to do this, and it was really claustrophobic. Like, I am a claustrophobic person. I don't like being in small spaces, but I can deal. This movie made me very uncomfortable. I think even if you're not not really claustrophobic, you will feel this movie. But I did give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd just because the special effects were, they kind of took me out of it. They were a little bit goofy. And also, like I said, with the kind of unnecessary character arcs and stuff, I thought it would have been enough if they were just trapped. Up next is the Belko Experiment, which was just yet another, like, super pleasant surprise. So I gave this one 3.5 stars out of 5 because I just didn't find the characters to be likable, which is like a really important thing for me for like the likability of a movie. And the characters just weren't really likable, but I think that for the story they were telling and kind of the ultimate message they were going for with the movie, that made sense. So while it was kind of hard to get through because you're not really rooting for any of the characters, for what they were going for, that choice was appropriate. I think that on a psychological level, this movie was really great. I love movies that bring up super unanswerable questions of morality. Like, for example, in this movie, one of like the first tasks that they have is they have to kill like 30 people or something, or else the people that are controlling whatever's going on are gonna kill 60 of them. So it's like, do you commit murder and kill 30 people, or do you not commit murder, because committing murder is the wrong thing to do, obviously, and then let even more people die? So it brought up a lot of great questions like that. I really enjoyed the Belko Experiment. Up next, The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. Now, this is not a horror movie. This is probably more geared towards teenagers, but I really got sucked into this movie. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd and I hearted it. I liked it. I just love the premise of it. I love Groundhog Day type movies. I love time loop movies. Another great one that came out last year was Palm Springs starring Andy Samberg. But in this movie, they're trapped in the same day, repeating over and over, and they go through and they like try to find all of the tiny perfect things that happen in that day. It's so sweet. It's just such a good idea. And even though the movie itself was like it kind of a little more shallow than it should have been for like the topics that got brought up, I still thought it was great. Like, I cried. My only complaint about it was that they used the black best friend trope, which is where like the white leads have a black best friend who is a really two-dimensional character and literally only exists for scenes to like give the white leads advice. That was literally the only purpose he served. He like didn't have any character development at all. That was the one thing that I wanted to comment on, but for the rest of the movie I loved. It's actually, I think, the highest rated movie that I watched this month, except for, oh no, there's 2 others I gave 4 stars, including this next one, The Bay. Found footage meets parasitic outbreak meets climate change narratives in this disgusting story. Even though it's found footage, and you can kind of see that some of the special effects are not the best, the practical effects are great, and the gore is really intense. This one kind of hits close to home just because it's commenting on kind of a lot of stuff that we are going through right now, but it is really good. Highly disturbing. It brings in some kind of sci-fi elements, surprisingly. I loved it. And it also feels like it's something that could really happen. Like, once you watch it, you'll see it. It feels like it could happen. You might think that it's starting off slow, you might think it's kind of a slow movie and hard to get into it, but trust me, when it picks up, it picks up and it doesn't let up. So I highly recommend The Bay. Up next is yet another Eli Roth found footage movie, and that would be The Sacrament from 2013. It's meh. It's meh. I gave it 2.5 stars because it's just kind of 5 out of 10 mediocre. It's an okay movie. I think it's well made. I think for a found footage movie, it's worth seeing. It's good if you like found footage, which I really do. But it's very clearly based on the Jamestown massacre, and that's really all this movie was. There wasn't a whole lot of narrative. Like, there wasn't really any character development. It wasn't super interesting, which I'm very interested in true crime, and if you're really fascinated by the Jamestown massacre, you might like this movie, but honestly, I don't really think that they took it there. It wasn't everything that I thought it could be. I think it had a lot more potential. Oh, and I made note on Letterboxd that according to IMDb, there was 30 minutes of background information removed from the final cut of the film. So maybe that would have helped the movie get a little bit more depth to it, so I don't know. And then I said, as is, it sort of just relies on broad themes and shock value, and that's basically all it is. Okay, up next is a movie that I couldn't finish. I couldn't get through it. It's called The Return. I was really upset about this because it stars Sarah Michelle Michelle Gellar, and oh my gosh, who was it? Adam Scott. Adam Scott was also in this movie, and he's like not even on the cover or anything. It was like probably one of his earliest works, although it came out in 2006, so no, I don't know, honestly, I don't know. But anyways, I gave this movie 1 star. I think I lasted maybe like a half hour to 40 minutes into this movie, and it was just so bad, and I could tell it was not getting better. Sarah Michelle Gellar is one of my favorite actresses of the late 90s and early 2000s, and I just feel like they did her so dirty. They didn't give her any personality at all in this movie. And she's a phenomenal actress, like she can handle large personalities. But it was so boring, and it was so hard to gauge what was going on in that movie. Like they were trying to set up exposition kind of in the form of like mystery, so they would kind of give you little bits and pieces, and she would kind of have flashbacks, but it was all very muddy. It was all very muddled. It was not good. Because initially I was like, how have I not heard of this? I love both these actors. This came out in 2006. But yeah, I understand now because it really was that bad. Just don't watch it. Up next, I rated Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I gave it 3.5 stars. I have talked about this on my channel before, but that was so long ago at this point, which by the way, I did a reaction video to my first ever horror movie review and my review of Friday the 13th. I did that on my Patreon. That was kind of painful. I don't really like looking back at my super old content. But anyways, the final chapter was a really fun one to rewatch. This was only my second time seeing it, and it was honestly just as fun as the first time. The climax of this movie and watching Crispin Glover dance is enough to do it for me. I think this one is super enjoyable to rewatch. Oh, and the final girl is pretty good in this movie. I think she's kind of an underrated final girl. Up next, unfortunately, would be Willys Wonderland, and I say unfortunate because I had to give this movie a very low score. There are always so many beeping trucks in my neighborhood. It makes filming really difficult. Anyways, so Willys Wonderland, I've talked with some people about this one and like some people in the horror community, and basically it's a really fun ride. It's kind of like exactly what I thought I was gonna get, but then it ended up being a little bit less. Really, like if all that you want to see is Nick Cage beating up animatronic animals, you'll get that, but you really won't get anything else. One thing though is that Nick Cage doesn't have a single line of dialogue, and his name in the movie is literally just the janitor. The only character quirk that he was given, well, he doesn't talk, but also that he has this alarm that goes off on his wrist like every, I don't know, couple hours or so, and whenever it goes off, it doesn't matter what he's doing, even if he's about to fight one of the animals or whatever, he has to go and drink a purple soda and play this pinball game. It doesn't make any sense. They never explain it. They just do it, and you're like, okay, but why? There's also really no narrative. The only exposition that you get to like set up the story kind of is just spoon-fed to you, because like one character will be talking to another character, and then it just goes into a flashback, and they just like tell you exactly what's happened. So if you want to really just like completely turn your brain off, not have to use your brain at all, and just consume a super easy, basic movie that doesn't really make much sense, Willys Wonderland might be the one for you, but I gave it 1.5 stars. Oh yeah, another thing that I included in my Letterboxd review is that there are several, not just one, there are several montages of Nick Cage cleaning. It's not exactly the most interesting thing to watch. The only interesting thing that happens in this movie is when he fights the animatronics. The rest of it is not good. The rest of the acting is also really trash. It's just not a good movie. Up next, I rewatched Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. This one's also super fun to rewatch. I don't rewatch a lot of the Friday the 13th movies. Well, one, because the only ones I own are Part 4 and 7. But this one is just so fun because Kane Hodder being Jason, like, just brought so much new life to this franchise. I love him as Jason. He also gets his ass handed to him, which is just so much fun. It's really fun to watch Jason get beat up. And the climax of this movie is just like so fun, with her being Carrie, and just like all the over-the-top dramatics I think are so much fun. I liked it a lot better on rewatch. I feel like I didn't give that movie a very good review, but I really like it a lot more now, so whatever, opinions change. I will say I think it is a little bit too long though. It's a little bit too long of a movie, and it's obviously like not the most high quality film, but it's fun. Up next, I watched a brand new Shudder original movie called Shook. Now, the story of this movie I think is interesting. I think it'll keep you engaged and you'll be able to watch the full thing and like be entertained. However, just because your interest will be maintained does not mean that the pacing is good. by any means. The acting was also pretty mediocre. Even like our leads especially, I wasn't into them. But the editing is also very weird. They had some really strange visuals because part of the premise of this movie is that your main character is like this social media personality and she kind of doesn't really care about anything but her other famous friends and herself. So she's kind of constantly online, constantly on her phone or the computer, and they project the graphics of what she's looking at like on the wall behind her or like on the couch next to her. It's really distracting. It's unique, but like I don't really know why they went with that choice. It was weird. So while I do recommend this one because I feel like even though it's kind of a Scream ripoff, honestly, that's what it is. It's like a modern Scream ripoff with a social media twist. It's worth seeing. Like I think it's an interesting story, but I cannot stress the mediocrity enough, and that's why I gave it 2.5 stars as well. Up next, another one that I gave 2.5 stars, unfortunately, was Jennifer's Body. I don't want you to get me wrong, like I think what that movie does is really important. I definitely picked up on like the feminist undertones. I loved the LGBTQ representation. I thought that they really accurately sort of portrayed the sexual tension that girls can have with each other. I also fully sympathized with Jennifer. I think that, you know, the scene where what happens to her is very impactful. Like despite her becoming a monster in that one scene, like she's just very obviously this innocent high school girl and like you really feel for her. So I like those aspects of it. I like that this movie had layers, but overall I didn't really enjoy the movie. It was just really weird. I described it in my Letterboxd review that like the beats felt very wrong. Like they didn't even attempt to make the pacing smooth or make sense. Another thing is they used this really lazy writing tactic where they started the movie kind of where the end of the movie actually is. And I hate when movies do that because it's like, well, here's a teaser of what happens at the end, so stick through the movie because we're gonna get to this part and it's really crazy, just wait. And that's just, ugh. And I just find that really lazy because it's like you don't really believe in your story enough. You don't think that you can maintain people's interest long enough to get there. You have to start the story where the story ends. It's just one of my least favorite things, and I do like a non-linear story structure only when it contributes to the plot, and this time it didn't. I thought it honestly kind of ruined some of the twists and what could have surprised us about the movie because they started it at the end. I think it would have been cool if it had slowly taken us there and then it kind of would have been more of a reveal. I also really didn't like the editing of it. I thought that the editing was super cheesy and it kind of took me out. There is a fight scene that involves Jennifer when she's like a demon and she makes them levitate up in the air and they're like spinning around and fighting and stuff, and all the editing and the camera angles just make it like really weird and kind of anticlimactic because I feel very taken out of it. It was just kind of some unnecessary drama that they added to what could have otherwise been a really interesting fight scene. I think that's kind of a symptom of the early 2000s. I've been watching some of the Saw movies too, and a lot of them suffer from the same thing. The editing is just really cheesy and takes me out of it. And also the movie kind of had a hard time figuring out where exactly it wanted to end. Like you think you're in the actual climax of the movie and then you remember, oh wait, no, because we started the movie where it ended and we're not there yet, so I guess this isn't the climax of the movie. And this movie also didn't really feel like it knew where it wanted to end. I feel like the climax was just so muddled because there were like 3 of them. Twice it happened where I thought, okay, I'm in the climax of the movie, and then I wasn't, and there was more rising action to go. Very strange choices. I think that the first time that I thought it was the climax, I thought that was the most appropriate place. I thought it was great. It was a great gross location, and then it wasn't, and then there were like 2 more. So it was just really weird. The pacing was super uneven, definitely not a traditional 3-act structure. I just really wasn't a fan of it. I'm a fan of the commentary it was making, but the movie itself, I didn't like it. And that hurts because I really wanted to like Jennifer's Body. That's not to say I won't rewatch it though, because I probably will. Up next, one of my favorite movies that I watched this month definitely, and that would be Cube from 1997. I feel like this movie's kind of underrated, so I'm gonna read the synopsis. A group of strangers find themselves trapped in a maze-like prison. It soon becomes clear that each of them possesses the peculiar skills necessary to escape if they don't wind up dead first. I think this movie is a great think piece. I've mentioned before on my channel, I really like when characters are trapped and they have to, like, on some sort of psychological level, figure out how to get out of where they are. This movie also kind of has a sci-fi vibe to it because the cube that they're trapped in, it just feels very otherworldly. It doesn't feel like you're really on Earth anymore. I did say that despite giving this 4 stars and I also liked it, I still said that I think that the ending left a lot to be desired because I understood what they were going for, and I'm not gonna explain any of it because I think if I explain any part of it, that'll ruin the twists of the movie. I understood what they were going for, but I thought it was a little bit underwhelming. I really wanted to get just like a little bit more in terms of answers. And I have been told that there is a sequel, but I've also heard it's really bad, so I'm not super interested in it. But I do highly recommend Cube. I think it's definitely worth checking out. I watched it for free on YouTube. It was free with ads. I know it's not available in Canada, but if you're in the US, you can watch it for free. Up next, we have the movie called I See You. I think this was a Prime original. And this one I gave 2.5 stars yet again. Very mediocre, very 50-50, and here's why. I really liked the first half of the movie. I loved the way that they were setting things up, and then the second half of the movie was literally just the first half of the movie, but from a different perspective. And all of the twists and everything felt so contrived. None of it was natural. I really did not like the story. And I feel like a lot of people will understand what I mean by this when I say that once you kind of get to the first big twist, the first big reveal, it sucks out all of the atmosphere that they spent so much time building up in the first half of the movie. I think the score was also really good. I think it's kind of an underrated score. You'll really appreciate the music in this movie, and I think the cinematography is also pretty good. And I think that the performances of the actors themselves were really believable, but it was what their characters did that was not. So that's a little bit confusing because I like their performances, but because what their characters were doing was so unbelievable, it was hard to believe them. I hope you get what I'm saying. And then by the time we got to the big twist, I just rolled my eyes because in reality, it really didn't make sense. It, like, for the characters that they spent the first half of the movie building up, the twists with them made no sense. And finally, this is the last movie I want to talk about. I wrote a lot for this one. I went in, and that would be Murder on the Orient Express, which I gave 1 star. I was looking forward to this movie so much. I am such a big fan of whodunit movies. Knives Out really revived that genre, and I think this movie was trying to be what Knives Out would eventually be, but this movie was bad. I made it like 30 minutes into it, and the death had not occurred. They spent all this time building up characters, and they were all super unlikable, so you're like, okay, well, whoever dies, I don't care, and whoever did it, I don't care. It was also directed by Kenneth Branagh, who was Gilderoy Lockhart in the second Harry Potter movie. He's also the lead of this film, and I don't know why directors try to also be the lead in their own films. I can think of very few examples where it works well, and this was not one of them, obviously. I basically just went on to talk about all of the elements of this movie that were super, super distracting, and number one was him. I could not get past his character. He was doing this god-awful French accent, and he had this super big fake mustache, and I get that, like, in whodunit movies, the characters have to be a little bit larger than life. They have to be almost like caricatures because you need to be able to identify them. You need to have a really, like, firm grasp of who they are as characters, because when you're thinking the whole time in the movie of, like, whodunit, you need to be able to draw on it and, like, remember all the characters, you know? But the accent and the mustache, I couldn't get past that. And I said, to make matters worse, amidst the absurd amount of exposition, because like I said, we went like a half hour into it, no one had died yet, I didn't latch onto or care about a single character. That's very true. I think honestly because a lot of the characters just didn't make sense to me. The dialogue was so bad. It was so weird. It was like whoever wrote the movie had never had a conversation with a real human in real life before. It was really weird. Another distracting element of the movie was the cinematography. Yes, oh my gosh, they tried to do these super extended one-shot shots. So there was a super long one of Kenneth Branagh's character like just walking along the train and kind of passing all the compartments and all of the characters that we'd met. It didn't add a single thing to the movie. It just kind of felt like we pressed pause on the movie and we just had to like sit there and wait for it to get back on track while they just inserted this one shot for no reason. It's different if that had included some of the dialogue that would like set up more of the exposition, but it didn't. It literally was just there because he was probably like, one shots are really cool and they'll be super artistic because I'm inside the train, the camera's outside the train. It was just stupid. It didn't work. It didn't work, and even the best one shots that they tried to do ended up being a little bit shaky. Like, they didn't have the best camera operators, that's for sure. I also wrote that I thought I would try to finish the movie in the next few days and give it another chance, but I don't see it going well. I haven't tried to finish it, honestly. Although maybe that by skipping like the first half hour of it and just kind of getting straight into the meat of things, maybe I'll enjoy it a little bit more from there. I don't know. know, but I gave it 1 star. I thought it was really bad. Also, nobody talks about it anymore because it was really bad. It's a shame too, because it was so hyped up. I was so hyped for it. The cast is fat. Like, there are so many good actors in it. As I mentioned, Kenneth Branagh, and then like Johnny Depp, Michelle Pfeiffer, okay, I literally can't think of any more right now, but I'll just put them up on the screen because like I can't remember. It was a fat cast. Just didn't enjoy it, but there you have it. That is everything that I watched in the month of February that I rated on Letterboxd. Like I said, almost everything else that I watched was part of a franchise, so I probably covered it in depth on my channel already, or I will in the future. So those thoughts and opinions are coming, don't worry. This was really nice. I liked filming in my bed. This was so much more comfortable than filming over there at my desk. But I know this is not the most pleasing background. I'll go back to my desk, don't worry. But I hope this was a nice surprise today, a nice little sort of extra video. I'm kind of just making up for not posting on Wednesday. But if you'd like even more content from me, my Patreon is down below, as well as my vlog channel and all my social media, and especially my Instagram. I recommend following me because I do post a lot of polls and I like to interact with you guys over there. I have a highlight actually where I've posted all of my polls, so hopefully you can still vote on them there. But that does it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed this more laid back video and that you don't mind that I kind of just hopped on the bandwagon. And I also hope that I catch you in the next one. Bye!